You open your mouth to scream, nothing comes out, no sound, no words, just silence where your voice should be. For the first few seconds, you panic. You gesture wildly, pointing at your throat, eyes wide with terror. The people around you stare back confused and frightened. Nobody understands what you're trying to say. Now imagine this wasn't a nightmare. Imagine this was simply what it meant to be human for hundreds of thousands of years. Your ancestors didn't have language, not the way you think of it. They had something older, stranger, and perhaps more powerful. What would your mind become without words? For roughly the first 300,000 years of Homo sapiens' existence, nobody spoke in sentences. Nobody arranged nouns and verbs into the complex structures you use without thinking. And yet your ancestors fell in love, raised children, hunted mammoths, survived Ice Age winters, and built the foundation for everything you call civilization today. How did they do it? The answer lies not in what they lost, but in what you've forgotten. Your body still carries the echoes of that wordless world. You just stopped listening. Let's travel back, way back. Before the agricultural revolution, before the first cities, before the invention of writing, before pottery, before permanent settlements. You are standing on an African savanna roughly 200,000 years ago. The sun is beginning to set, casting long orange shadows across the tall grass. Your tribe, perhaps 20 individuals, is gathering around a fire. There are no words being spoken, and yet everyone knows exactly what's happening. How the archaeologist Stephen Mithen, in his groundbreaking work, The Singing Neanderthals, proposed something radical. He argued that before language as you know it, humans communicated through something he calls, a system combining holistic utterances, musicality, manipulation, and motion. Not broken language, not failed attempts at speech. A completely different communication system that was rich, expressive, and deeply effective. Think of it this way. When you hear a baby cry, you know exactly what they need. Hunger, pain, fear, comfort. No translation required. Your ancestors were fluent in a language that had no dictionary. The evidence is carved into stone and bone across continents. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologist Christopher Henshelwood and his team uncovered engraved ochre pieces dating back 77,000 years. Geometric patterns, crosshatched designs deliberately etched into pigment. Were these symbols? Early writing? Or something else entirely? Nobody knows for certain. But what's clear is that your ancestors were compelled to mark, to make, to leave traces of meaning long before they could write their names. They needed to communicate something that mattered. And they found a way. Walk into any dark cave in Europe, and you'll see something even stranger. Chauvet Cave in France, Lascaux Altamira in Spain. Thousands of years before the first written word, humans descended deep into the earth, navigating by torchlight through narrow passages to paint animals on walls. Lions, bison, horses, mammoths. These weren't doodles. They weren't random. They were deliberate, skilled, and deeply meaningful. The archaeologist David Lewis Williams spent decades studying this rock art and proposed that these images were part of shamanic rituals, attempts to communicate with forces beyond the visible world. Whether or not that's true, one thing is certain: your ancestors were desperate to express something, and they would risk their lives to do it. But how did wordless communication actually work in daily life? You might imagine a world of grunts and gestures, crude and limited, but research suggests something far more sophisticated. Evolutionary psychologists like Robin Dunbar have shown that social grooming, the act of touching, cleaning, and caring for others' bodies, served as the primary bonding mechanism in early human groups. Before language, touch was trust. A hand on a shoulder said more than any sentence could. When you hug someone today, when you hold a crying friend, when you instinctively reach out to comfort another person, you're using a communication system that predates humanity itself. Your body remembers what your mind has forgotten. Consider what happens when you can't use words. Right now, in this moment, try to communicate joy without speaking smile. Your brain knows exactly what to do. Your facial muscles contract in a precise configuration that every human on Earth will instantly recognize. Now try fear, surprise, disgust, anger, contempt, sadness. You didn't learn these expressions. Research by psychologist Paul Ekman demonstrated that these 6 basic emotions are universally expressed and understood across all human cultures, from the remote tribes of Papua New Guinea to the streets of Tokyo. Your face is a wordless dictionary that every human can read. Your ancestors didn't need language to know if someone was dangerous, trustworthy, afraid, or angry. They had faces, and faces were enough. But what about complex ideas? Could wordless humans communicate something like, "The herd will arrive at the river by sunset"? The evidence suggests yes, through a combination of gesture, vocal tone, and shared context that modern humans can barely imagine. Studies of great apes like bonobos and chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, reveal sophisticated communication systems involving gestures, vocalizations, and even pointing. Research by primatologist Franz de Waal has documented bonobos using gestures to coordinate group movement, resolve conflicts, and share food. If your distant cousins can do this, your ancestors certainly could too. Language didn't appear from nothing. It evolved from something older. Think about what happens when you watch a mime perform. No words, no sounds, and yet you understand everything. A person walking against an invisible wind, someone trapped inside an invisible box, a couple falling in love across an invisible wall. Your brain doesn't need language to comprehend these stories. It needs something older, something that existed long before the first word was ever spoken. Your ancestors were masters of this invisible art. They lived inside a world of gesture, expression, and shared attention that modern humans can barely remember. The archaeological record offers tantalizing clues about how this worked. At Schöningen in Germany, a team led by Hartmut Thieme discovered 8 wooden spears preserved in an ancient lake bed. These weren't crude tools. They were carefully crafted throwing spears, designed for balance and aerodynamics, made approximately 300,000 years ago. But here's what matters for this story. These spears were found alongside the remains of horses, suggesting coordinated group hunting. Think about what that requires. A group of hunters must communicate distance, direction, timing, and strategy. They must coordinate movement across space. They must act as a single organism with a shared goal, all without sentences, all without the language you take for granted every day. How the answer may lie in what researchers call shared intentionality. Developmental psychologist Michael Tomasello has spent decades studying how human children differ from chimpanzees in the way they communicate. His findings are striking. Human infants, long before they can speak, naturally point at things they want adults to notice. They hold up objects to share interest. They follow gazes to see what others are seeing. Chimps rarely do any of this. This capacity for shared attention, for knowing that another mind exists and can be directed towards something, may be the foundation of all human communication. Your ancestors didn't need words to point at a herd of gazelle on the horizon. They didn't need sentences to signal that one hunter should circle left while another waits in ambush. They had eyes, hands, and a deep understanding that they were not alone in the world. Now imagine yourself back on that savanna. The fire has burned low. Stars are scattered across the sky like scattered salt on black cloth. Your tribe sits in a loose circle. Someone begins to hum, not words. Just sound, a low rhythmic vibration that rises and falls like breathing. Another voice joins, then another. Soon the whole group is producing a complex layered sound that has no name in any dictionary. This isn't a song in the way you think of songs. It's something older. A synchronization of bodies and minds that creates a feeling of unity no words could ever capture. The music therapist and researcher Patricia Oppenheim has documented how rhythm and sound can create profound emotional connection between humans who cannot speak. Patients with severe dementia, who have lost virtually all language, will still respond to music, still join in rhythmic clapping, still show signs of deep emotional recognition. Something in your brain responds to shared sound at a level deeper than words can reach. Your ancestors knew this instinctively. They used voice not to convey information, but to create bonds. The harmonies they produced around ancient fires didn't need translation. They said what words cannot say. We are here. We are together. We are safe. But there's something even stranger buried in your evolutionary history. Something that challenges everything you assume about communication. In 2019, archaeologists working at a site called Bilzingsleben in Germany published analysis of a 400,000-year-old elephant tibia that had been deliberately engraved with a series of regular, evenly spaced marks. Not random scratches, not butchery marks. Deliberate, repetitive, intentional marks arranged in a pattern. What were they counting? What were they tracking? Nobody knows. But the implication is staggering. Long before language, long before writing, your ancestors were developing external memory systems. They were extending their minds beyond their bodies, creating records that could outlast a single life. This matters more than you might think. Language allows you to store information in other minds. You tell someone something, and now 2 brains hold that knowledge. But external marks, whether on bone, ochre, or cave walls, allow information to travel across time itself. A mark made today can be read tomorrow, next year, or 40,000 years from now. Your ancestors were building the first libraries before they had words to fill them. They were creating communication that didn't require a speaker and a listener to be in the same place, or even the same century. Consider the implication for your own life. Right now, you carry a device that connects you to virtually all human knowledge. You can read words written by people who died centuries ago. You can see images captured on the other side of the planet. You can communicate with minds you will never meet. But this technology didn't begin with smartphones or the internet. It began with a hominin scratching lines onto a bone, trying to remember something important enough to preserve. Every time you take a note, save a file, or leave a message, you're participating in a communication revolution that started before your species had a name. Now let's return to the question that opened this journey. What would happen if you lost your voice tomorrow? Not just your ability to speak, but your access to language entirely. The answer might surprise you. Studies of deaf individuals who grew up without exposure to sign language reveal something remarkable about the human mind. These individuals, sometimes called homozyners, spontaneously develop their own communication systems. They create gestures for objects, actions, and relationships. They build grammar from nothing. They find ways to express everything that matters to them. The linguist Susan Golden Meadow has spent decades studying these spontaneous communication systems. Her research demonstrates that the human capacity for language isn't dependent on any specific language. It's a deep biological drive that emerges whenever humans need to connect. Your brain is wired to communicate. It will find a way. If you lost every word you know tomorrow, your hands would begin to speak. Your face would become eloquent. Your body would rediscover an ancient vocabulary that predates humanity itself. But there's a deeper truth here. Even with all your words, you're still using that ancient communication system every single day. When you roll your eyes at a boring meeting, when you cross your arms defensively during an argument, when you lean towards someone you find attractive, when you avoid eye contact with a stranger on the bus, your body is constantly speaking a language your conscious mind rarely notices. You are bilingual without knowing it. One language has words, the other has no name.